Okay, everybody, it's a little bit after 1. I'll go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Brian, and this is SMMware. We're going to give a general demonstration of it today. And along the way, I'd be happy to answer questions, any that come up. And I'd be particularly interested in hearing about the particular problems that people want to see improvement in. Our tour today is going to be divided into a few parts. We're going to start off here in the blue part. We're going to walk through the idea of creating clients and estimates, and creating jobs, entering hours and expenses, what it's like to create an invoice, talk a little bit about file sharing. That's our first track. And then from there we have organizations and contacts as a second, calendaring, task notes and calls, and mobile. And then our last section, we've got some discussion about integrations. And again, we're going to start here on this blue track and with clients. Hi, Karen, Harvey. Hopefully you can hear me all right, but I am here. All right, so we're looking at the home page in SMMware, and someone calls you up and says that they want to talk to you about a possible job. The first thing you do is create a client record, which you can think of as being a person record, or if you can think of it as a potential client, a current client, past client. But this is where we store information that is not going to change from one job to the other. So it's common to deal with somebody either estimating or actually having multiple jobs over time. And so we have one record that stores that kind of information. Like, there's no need to enter their first name, last name, email address, and cell phone number into the system more than once. After we create that initial record, we have some buttons here where we can create jobs. If they have already hired you, then you don't have to go through an estimation phase. And we have the button for creating an estimate. And we're going to go take a look at creating estimates in a moment. But before we move on, I have a few fields here to talk about. In terms of who referred this business to you, SMMware actually breaks that down into 3 fields. We have the category field, which is intended for something very generic like realtor or senior living center. And then from there, we go into the company and the person. And then that information in turn plays into our referrals report, which offers some filtering based on date ranges or categories, and lets you kind of slice and dice the information about where your business is coming from, how many hours you're getting from that category, and so on. We also have custom fields, and the fields here are specific about the person as opposed to a location. So you can have a custom field for example, mobility issues. That's going to be true for a person even when they move from location to location. Later on, when we look at jobs, you'll see that custom fields there are specific to the location. So you'll see things like gate codes, elevator codes, which day the garbage comes, things like that. We also let you assign a client representative here. If, let's say you're working with an attorney on an estate job and that you worked with them before, then they will appear in this list. This is your list of client reps that are already in the system. If it's a family member, then chances are they will not already be in the system, and you can add them from here, entering all their information. One of the ways in which SMMware is helpful for senior move managers is the idea that if you work with, say, a senior living center on a regular basis, in our organizations section, you can designate a category as senior living centers, and then all of those will appear here, and find one where there's a real address. And then by choosing that, you can fill out all the information at once, and that way you just have to put in something like the apartment number or suite number. It's also worth pointing out that SMMware keeps a separate set of fields for a spouse, so you don't necessarily have to mix their first name to say like Margot and Jim as their first name. We're going to go ahead and start looking at estimates. And here you can designate the type of work you're expecting to do with the job type. And the status usually starts off as in progress. If you're working on it and the client's waiting on you, it's considered to be in progress. After you give them a quote and you're waiting to hear back from them, that's considered submitted. And then, of course, we've got won and declined. You can designate a sales lead. And let's see what else we want to talk about here. We've got something on the home page that helps you keep track of how you're doing with your estimate funnel, so to speak. And this is where the information gets entered. When we look at the home page later on, I'll go through that in a little more detail. And of course, we've got a set of fields for where they are moving to, just as we do for the client. Another thing about SMMware is that it keeps an address history, and it's kind of a layer cake that starts on the bottom with the address that they had when you met them that goes in the client profile. And then every time you work for them, that is a job, and it adds one more layer. And so over time, you build up multiple layers for however many times you work with them. I also mentioned that if you take photographs during the estimation phase, that you can store them here in SMMware. And we've got the regular file manager where lower level employees can have access to that. And we've got the restricted file manager, which is for higher level users. And this would be someplace that if you want to upload a PDF of a signed contract or something like that, you can go into the restricted file manager. All right, so we're going to create a new version of a quote. The button is just shortened down to say new version. Creating an estimate in SMMware or quote is a question of working with the blocks that we offer. And you just build them up. Every time I click on these three dots, I add a new item below it. And typically what you'll do is you'll have created a quote and then save it as a template. And then when you come to start a new one, you'll actually load it from a template, which I'm going to go ahead and do. This is an example that uses the header blocks to give it some structure, and then we have groups. And you can see that you can just modify the hours and so on and so forth. So the idea is to start with a template and build on that rather than starting from scratch every time. You can view a PDF of your estimate. And that's what that looks like. And you can also email the PDF to your prospective client. You can also have multiple versions of quotes. So I'm going to, let's say I gave them a quote and then they write back that they're interested, but they want to add some more work to it. So rather than overwriting the version that you have here, you create a new version. So now I've got a version 2. And we have this field that does not appear on the estimate called the version notes. When you're looking back in a few months and you see that you have 3 different quotes, you'll understand why you came up with those 3 different versions. And having created a quote, when we saved it, it saved the amount and the hours here. And what I'm going to do now is just look at the list of estimates. And the amounts that are put into the listing, and they're used for generating some figures here. So this is kind of like your status report. Tells you how many records are in progress, how many are submitted, and what their value is based on, or gives you some percentages for value, for hours, and just for quantity. So it really gives you a sense of how your sales process is going. Before I move on, I was going to mention that you can, this is the listing again, and you can filter it based on the status levels and based on clients. And when you filter it, there's also a date range, so you can have a sense of how you did in a certain quarter or year. And if you're looking at it from the point of view of how busy your sales staff is, you can base the filtering on when the estimate was created, because that's when they were doing the work. Or if you want to gauge how busy you think that your staff are going to be working on these jobs, then you can filter it based on the job begin date that you put into the estimate profile. All right, from here, we'll go ahead and create a job. You can see that information carried over for the job. Here we've got some custom fields, as I talked about, things like elevator code. SMMware allows you to charge your clients based on two different approaches. You've got a single rate that you charge for every hour across the entire job. So you have a per job rate. The other approach is using job codes, and that's when you want to charge a different rate based on the kind of work being done. So floor planning versus packing, or based on who is doing the work, team leads versus team members, or maybe the owner's time is worth more. But those are your two basic approaches. Okay, and let's go ahead and save this job. It tells you which estimate was used to create this job. And by establishing that tie between the job and the estimate, we can do analysis and compare what was estimated versus what was how it actually played out. I'd like to point out that there's a few shortcut buttons. Every time that you see something that looks like this, that is a button, and it will jump you over either, in this case, to the estimate. This will jump you over to the client's profile. So we provide an easy way of getting around within the system using the shortcuts. So you don't necessarily have to go back from here. If you want to get to this client profile, you don't have to go back to the client listing, find the right client, and so on and so forth. And while we're here, I'll demonstrate the file manager. And it works much the same way on mobile devices as what you'll see here. Trying to remember where I left my on my example screenshots. I'm just going to pick a photo here and pick a PDF, and we'll just go with the color picking tool. And we'll go ahead and mention that there's tagging here. This is all customizable. A lot of the drop downs that you see are customizable. And I'm going to assign a tag. The underlying thinking is that you walk into a room and, say, the bedroom, you'll take a bunch of photos, and then you go to upload them and you tag them. And that way you will be able to filter them down below. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and upload this one document. It's not really a photo like of a bedroom or anything like that. So once we're here, you'll notice that it is tagged from being from the bedroom. Before I forget, if you're uploading directly off of a camera, you have this auto rename feature, and that will take the long random string that the phone assigns and give it something more meaningful. So it'll combine the tag name along with the sequence number. So if you're uploading, say, 10 photos, it would be bedroom 1 _ 001, and then the same pattern, 002, 003, and so on and so forth. And then from here, you can download the photo again if you want to. And if you select a bunch of photos, you would get a zip file. You can also share the documents. And since SMMware already knows who the client is and what their email address is, it really boils down to a question of sharing it yes or no. You don't have to think about who you're sharing it with. In this case, it's the client. And you just say, yeah, I want to share it with them. If you want to share it with either, say, family members who are contacts or vendors, let's say the moving company, then you can pick them from the list of contacts. And you can share an entire directory from the icon up here, or download the entire directory as well. All right, so from here, we're going to go look at what it's like to enter hours. As an administrator, I get this drop down, and I can enter hours on behalf of myself or others. As a regular user, I would not have that ability. This top section is where you can make new entries. Down below that, you see the existing entries. And of course, you have to input a date for your hours. You have to pick a job. And we'll put in a time range. SMMware offers two different approaches for how you enter your time. Here we've got the two fields, start time and end time. But alternatively, the system could be set to have a single field where you would simply put in 4 hours. We also offer the break hours so that you can enter that or record that information at the same time. For the description, you can either hand type out whatever you want, or you can use this drop down and select one of the predefined terms. This is also configurable. SMMware offers a system for paying the employees for travel, and you can enter the total travel here. The formula is that a certain number of miles are not, the first number of miles are not payable, and then after that they get paid a certain amount per mile. And then SMMware will work out the math on that to figure out what they should be paid. And I should point out that this is the round trip miles. And while I'm at it, every time you see this little I, it stands for information. If you mouse over it, you don't have to click on it. You just put your mouse over it, and it'll give you a little tooltip that explains and provides a little more information for whatever it's describing. Okay, and you can also add more than one entry at a time. So for instance, if you work at one job in the morning and one in the afternoon, you don't have to go through this process and repeat it. You can just add another item at the same time. The system also sends out an email to whoever you designate if somebody enters their hours late. So the idea is that you want to prevent hours from kind of magically appearing in the system for 2 weeks ago, and then there's issues with invoicing and so on where you're not even aware that this time was added. So down here we can see our new entries that we just put in. You can edit and delete them from here. Now this little mouse over tells you when they were created and by who and when they're last revised. For those of you who are interested in Quickbooks integration, the QB tells you that this has already been copied over to QuickBooks. For Amy, there is SMMware is a website, whether you are on a desktop or a mobile device, and the screen rearranges itself for the page rearranges itself for the screen size. A little later on, I'm going to fire up a test phone and show you what that looks like in particular. And when you're working on a phone, we typically advise putting an icon on the desktop, which you then click on and open it in the same way as you would an app. So the experience is pretty much the same. You open up your phone, you see the icon, click on it. Now you're into the program, and you can start entering hours, check your schedule, etc., etc. You're welcome. All right, moving along. This is how you enter expenses. Looks a lot like the hours entry. We're going to record the date that the expense was made and what client it was for, the total amount of the expense, some sort of comments, a vendor where you spent the money, and then for this set of radio buttons, the company radio button means that a company credit card was used, and the reimbursable radio button means that one of your employees paid out of cash, and then you need to pay them back. Cindy, hi, this is about ADP payroll. It's something that I'm aware that you're interested in that, and I would say that it's going to happen, but it's going to be a little while yet. There's a number of items that are on the roadmap, so to speak, that I'm going to be working through. So I would say the answer is yes, but it is going to be a little while. Going back to the expense entry, we also have the ability to create more than one row here, and we have the same pattern that that the existing entries are down here. I'd also point out that this particular system is configured to use our approval. This is, as I said, it's optional, and once the item, if you are using that feature, once the item is approved, then the employee cannot just start modifying it, because then you'd have to approve it again. So in this case, I approved these items, and that's why they're not editable. For Mary, you do have to have a vendor, but you can create new vendors by going to the organizations section. So we have a list of organizations and contacts, and it serves a couple of purposes, one of which is to designate some of them as vendors. And then we'll go into a little bit more detail on that in one of our later sections in the webinar. Okay, so from here, we're going to go take a look at invoicing. You can find that under Admin and Invoice Manager. When you create a new invoice, we have this section right here. First thing you do is select the job and then click on New Invoice. See where we have some hours that might be used. Not sure if this particular job has hours, but we're going to take a look. And if it doesn't, I'll use one of the existing invoices for demonstration. What we have here is status level, or excuse me, an invoice type. We have two different kinds. There's the itemized, which is, you might think of as the traditional invoice. You're pulling in all the hours and all the expenses and adding those things up to get your total. The other approach is a flat amount, in which case you just enter the amount that you're charging. This is suitable for a deposit. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the itemized. All right, for this job, I'm not sure if I have any hours in the system for it, but I'm going to give it a shot. So I'm setting a date range. The idea of setting a date range is that if you have a longer job, lasts, say, 6 months, and you want to invoice them on a monthly basis, then you need a way of telling the system which items should be brought in. So we set a start and end date. Tell the system to go look for items, and yeah, they're already part of an invoice, but it does tell you that. So you'll see, if you don't pull in items here, you'll see why. So I'm just going to return to one of the existing invoices and show you the details there is what I'll do. All right, so we've got a bunch of items here. You'll notice that the description is editable. What we found is that people who are creating invoices often are not entirely satisfied with the descriptions that were entered by the employees. They may be unclear or just, for whatever reason, need a little tweaking. And so you can modify those here. And when you hit save, it saves that entry. And that is, it's not a copy, it's the actual entry that you're editing, just for clarity. If you have a client that is moving, for the address on the invoice, you get this drop down. You can pick which address it's going to. Sometimes it has to go to their existing address or their old address. Sometimes it has to go to the new one. So you can make that choice at that time. If there was a client representative, then there would also be the address for the client representative, and it would be marked as being their address. Instead of saying current original, it would say client rep, and their name would be popped into this field care of. Also, I'll note that we have a place here for putting in notes to yourself. This is something that the client is not going to see, so you can say whatever you need to say there. Here we have notes that appear on the invoice, and that does appear to the client. There's also a section for adjustments, which would typically be, say, like you broke a vase and you have to remove some certain amount of money to compensate them for it. You can reflect that you have a deposit for this job here as well. SMMware also comes with a status level and an approval system for your invoices. When you first create the invoice, it comes in as preliminary, which is kind of saying that it's a scratch pad, and you're letting other people in the company know that they should not be sending it off to the client, anything like that. The next level is called finalized, and the team leads are intended to approve the invoice since they're the ones who were on site. They knew which employees were there, and they know which work was done. But this is an optional feature, so I've got it turned off for this system right now. If it was turned on, once this was finalized, you'd get an approve button here. But however, I have it turned off, so you can just kind of short circuit things and go straight to the team leader approved status level. And when I do change the status level after I hit save, these buttons are going to go away, and they are replaced by new ones for generating a PDF and for emailing that PDF to the client. So what you're looking at down below can be considered as the real invoice, and we allow you to present that information to the client in 3 different ways. So first we have the summary invoice, which is as bare bones as it gets, and has different categories for the different, or has lines for each of the different major categories, expenses and labor and so on. It's very simple and straightforward. The idea is that you can use your own judgment to decide which format to send to the client based on which one you think will generate the least pushback. So the detailed invoice will have 1 line item for every employee for every day they work. So it can be fairly long. So you can see adjustments and the deposits and so on. Here's our little note. Thank you for your business. When you click on the email button, you get a little pop-up, and it tells you where it's going to be sending the email. So you have a chance to verify that before you hit the send button. The last format is called roll-up, and what that means is that all the line items for a given day are rolled up into 1 line item, which makes for a much shorter invoice, and it will tell you the number of employees that worked on a given day. So again, that's the most suitable, or it might be a more suitable format when you want to have a little less detail, a little bit shorter invoice. And that brings us to the end of our first track. Again, we've covered entering clients, creating estimates, entering jobs, entering hours and expenses, creating invoices, touched a little bit on file management. Our next section is going to talk about organizations and contacts. Before I move on, I would like to point out the search bar. The results come back divided up between the client records and the organization records, also contacts and the associates. So the idea is that if you have Jane Doe in there twice, and one of them is under organization, one of them is under the clients, you'll know for sure which one is which. rather than having them all mixed together. For Daisy, so once the invoice is marked as paid, so you're saying you'd like the status to show on the invoice. So you would like to see a status status field here on the final invoice. It's not there right now, but I will make a note of that. So I do think that's probably a good idea. And I'd like to point out that for SMMware, that we're always making improvements and we're always open to suggestions, always happy to hear from people with what they think SMMware should go, or what should be added to it next. So we covered the search results. So again, our organization contacts. The organization is meant to be the business, like a senior living center. And the contacts are people who work there, like a director of marketing, something like that. SMMware allows you to categorize your contacts and your organizations. So that way you can come down and say, I just want to look at all of my real estate organizations. And the list of categories is configurable. I think maybe I'll take this moment to jump over and show you the settings editor. And there's a lot of stuff here that you can do to settle in and make SMMware your own. Here's our categories. And if we were to edit that, we would see or we'd be able to make new ones and delete unused ones and so on and so forth. But as you can see from here, there's a lot of different settings in SMMware that let you make it function the way that you want. Coming back to our organizations, I would like to point out that you can export these. There's a lot of places in SMMware where there's an export button, and you can get a CSV file, which then opens in Excel. In this case, you can pick entire categories in order to include them and all their entries in the output. You can also pick individual entries, so you can really mix and match what you're exporting. I'm opening up one of the files now, one of the organizations. This is where you can assign your categories. And the information we collect is pretty much as you would expect, name, address, and so on. I'd like to point out that you can upload files to an organization. So if a senior living center gives you a PDF and it's got all of their standard floor plans, this would be a great place to store that. Everyone's going to know to go to that organization's profile, to look at the file manager and find exactly that document. So it's very clear where you can go. And later on, we'll be talking more about task notes and calls, but I did want to point out that you can assign them directly to an organization or a contact as well. But again, we'll go into more detail for those later. All right, down here we've got a contact for that organization. I can go ahead and edit that contact from here. I can create a new contact. So this is more or less a shortcut. It's not the only way to create a contact. But if you're going to add them to this particular organization, actually I should, oops. I hit the wrong button. I went back to the contact listing. Go back where I was. What I meant to do was create a new contact just to show you that the information is going to come over, the address and so on. So that way you can just add their info and already have the organization set up. If I needed to change, if I had the wrong one, I could always change the organization they were associated with. And the checkboxes I want to point out while we're here, is that you can designate somebody as acting as a client rep, so maybe like an attorney, that would be appropriate. You can also indicate that someone refers business to you. That might be someone at a senior living center, might be a real estate agent, something like that. And that information, in conjunction with the date of last contact, is fed into some of our other functionality, which we'll be going into later. And I'm going to jump back to the organization's profile using one of these shortcuts again, and point out that they can be designated as a vendor. So this one, there'd normally be a checkbox here after you check it, and then after you use them, it is locked in as a yes. This is the spot in the profile where you would go to do that. All right, and that's one of our shorter tracks from here. Start talking about calendars and tasks and notes and calls. And looking at look at a job. And looking at tasks. So here is where we can create a new task. Let's see what it looks like to have just the one before we start talking about multiples. Here's where you can put in a due date. I can set a couple of reminders. I can assign it to someone else. Put in a quick summary. So all the tasks for this particular job appear here. If one of them was late, it would be in red. But you can see how high the priority is and who was assigned to, who was created by. And you can also use this button to see all the details in one fell swoop. You can review the history of the tasks. So after you've worked with SMMware for a while and you've been creating tasks one by one, you'll notice that you're creating similar tasks from one job to the next. And you might ask how you can manage tasks more quickly and easily. And the answer to that is task groups. And again, this is something that can be defined in the settings editor. A task group, just like it sounds, is more than one task. It's a group of tasks. And you can get them all added at once. In the settings editor, you can define your tasks, and then that will set the default summary, the default notes. It'll guess at a due date. So you'll say that, hey, whenever I'm creating this task, it's typically due 1 week down the line, 2 weeks down the line. And then from there, you can tweak it a little bit if needs be. Set reminder emails, set priority. And you can also define this task to be assigned to a certain person. So typically floor planning is something that is a specialty, and someone will be handling that. So you might as well have any tasks about it assigned to them by default. But of course, these are just defaults, and you can rearrange or you can change the settings as needed. You can add some more detail. And again, this is the first task. Here's the second task in the group, third task. So this way, when we hit add, we're going to be adding all these tasks in one shot. And if we don't need all the tasks that are in this group, we can just hit the X button and get rid of one. And what this approach does is provides consistency. It provides consistency at the level of a given task because the language is preset, and then you just tweak it as needs be. But it also provides consistency because rather than adding tasks one at a time and trying to remember all the tasks, you start off where all the tasks are presented to you, and then you prune away the ones you don't need this time around. So it cuts down on the idea of forgetting them. While we're in the neighborhood, I'll point out that when you create events on the calendar, that the job will have a listing of those events. It's in the list format rather than the grid format, just because at this level, you just want to see the overall past history, and if these are spread out over multiple months, then you might have to be paging around wondering if you've caught all of them. And we'll talk more about events shortly. So now here's notes. A note is simpler than a task. It is just the summary and the detail. For Amy, yes, the email will go to the person that the task is assigned to. So they'll get an email when the task is assigned to them. When they hit complete, then the person who created the task will get the email back. And if the person who signed it changes the details, they get an email as well. But actually, I had not mentioned that, so thank you for asking that question. The text that comes up here in the note is also in the settings editor, and the idea is that you can indicate what you want, what kind of information you want people to collect. And if it's not appropriate for this particular circumstance, I can just get rid of it, because it's like a suggestion, it's a template, and you can override it. Here's a typical keyboard randomness. And the system keeps track of who created the note and when, and you can see a history over time. And you can also pull up the entire listing all at once to get the full picture. And people are, unless you're an administrator, then you won't be modifying each other's notes, so that way you know that what that person said is what they really said. We offer functionality for calls that is similar to tasks, and you can use this for future calls. You put a call date that's in the future, you set some reminders. You can also use it for calls that came in randomly where you just want to record it into the system, in which case you probably wouldn't bother with any reminders, and the call date would be in the present or past. And of course, you want to collect the phone number, and you probably want to take notice of whether you're calling them or they're calling you. That'd be good to know. And a summary. I should point out here that SMMware keeps a history of who the team lead is. So we designate that here. And since the team lead can change over time, then SMMware does keep track of that, and it generates a history of team leads. This one doesn't even have one assigned, so it just says none found. And invoices for this job. It's another easy way of finding that information. All right, from here I'm going to move on to the home page. The home page is your dashboard. And when we're looking at the jobs, there was a section for adding a status. The idea is to give you kind of a 30,000-foot view of the company and how it's doing. Some jobs can be going great, and you can leave them tagged as being in good shape. Others might have a minor issue, and you designate them as being flagged in some way. And then other jobs might have a significant issue, so you mark them with an alert. For Mary, the tasks are assigned to just one person. There's not an option for assigning it to more than one. The underlying thinking is that once a task is assigned to more than one person, then it gets confusing about who's actually in charge of doing it. So it was designed with just the one. As far as the notes are concerned, there's not currently a function for emailing anybody for that the note was created, and I think there would be a question of knowing who the email would go to, and maybe we can talk later on about little details about how that might function. So that's worth talking about. Okay, here again on the home page, that's the status board for your ongoing jobs. We have a similar one for sales, and it has a different set of keys. This one's defined as cold lead, medium lead, hot lead. These keys are defined by you back in our settings editor, so you can have, instead of 3, you can have 5 and whatever labels and whatever colors you want. Everyone gets a section called My Tasks. Some of the sections that you see are not available to everybody. Some of them are for admins, like the status board. But everybody gets a My Tasks section. If a section has, if it starts with the word My, then you know that everybody gets it. So this is going to be literally my tasks. These are everything that's assigned to me. The system goes throughout the records, gathers together the tasks for different jobs, and gives you a comprehensive list here. And if you create a task and assign it to somebody else, you can keep track of that here. So that's when you delegate a task. And if you are a higher level user, you'll get this section, which goes throughout the company and gives you all the unfinished tasks. And you can get a sense of how busy the company is and how well they're keeping up. So hopefully you won't see too much red. When someone completes a task, the system will keep track of it here for 5 days. So that way you can get a sense of what's been finished recently. Then there's my calls. Going back to the system of approving invoices, if you are designated as the team lead on a job, then it will appear here under invoices for my approval. So then you can go look at that and determine if it's ready to go or not. And again, I mentioned that we have an approval system for the actual hourly and expense items. For Sharon, I think that when it comes to, well, the thinking was that 5 days is, the section is for tasks that are recently completed. And 5 days was, the thinking was that it was giving you a sense of things that are fresh, still kind of fresh. But if you want to know everything that's been going on for a given job, because it goes over months, you can go back to the job profile and you can see all the tasks and their statuses there. So if you, like, I think that if you had, I think it's something you want to keep track of, but I'm not sure if this is the section where we would do that, because there's just a focus on being recent. Hopefully that answers the question. And if you have some thoughts on functionality, then we can talk about that. Going back to the hourly expense or hour and expense items that need approval, then this is where you can see that things are needing approval that are assigned to jobs that you're the team lead on. You can see if you're an admin, you can go to this page and get a sense of everything that's going on that needs approval. And you can reject them and say why. And again, this is an optional feature. And it's probably most appropriate for larger organizations. I think that for small organizations, it's a level of process that is maybe not necessary. And this is also part of the approval system, so that if somebody rejects one of your entries, then it'll appear here, and you'll know that you've got to look into it. From here, we have a couple of sections that simply tell you which jobs you're on, helps you get the sense of what's on your plate. Next, we have the referring contacts. And this ties into the contacts section. Some of them are designated as giving you business, and it also tells, or you also enter when you last spoke to them. And in that way, you make sure you avoid a situation where someone who's used to send you business has kind of dropped off the radar. Maybe they're mad about something, and then it takes you a long time to notice, and by the time you talk to them, they're mad about that as well. So if you just keep working with this section, then keep it fresh, then you can avoid that situation. So for instance, October is pretty recent, but somebody I haven't spoken to in August, and if they send me business, it's probably time to check in with them. The next two sections are about clients that are willing to act as a reference. This is for sales purposes. A client can be designated in their profile as willing to act as a reference or not, and that will put them here. And then if you have not asked them if they're willing to be a reference, then and the job ends, then you get this list where you can work through this list and keep the first one fresh. All right, so from here we're going to talk about calendars. On the home page, everybody has a calendar of items that affect them. So this really is my schedule. It's not the company-wide schedule, it's just mine. And in order for an event to appear here, it has to be that I am an attendee or at least the main contact for it. That will lead us into a discussion about the master calendar. This list of keys down here is completely customizable. Some people designate their events just based on whether it's for a job or whether it's a consult for the estimation phase. And other people prefer an approach that is focused on the kind of work being done that day. So they could have pack, unpack, and so on and so forth. So you have 11 of these keys to play with, and they can have whatever label, color that you want, and they can be tied to jobs or to estimates. If an event is tentative, then you can designate it as so in the event editor, and it'll have this red outline, so you get a sense of which ones are firm and which ones are tentative. You can also see who is assigned to a task. You get your initials here embedded in the calendar, and you get their full name in the little pop-up. And if you put the address into the event, you get a map link. And if you're on your phone, that will also give you then once you're in the mapping function, it'll give you your GPS directions. Here's how you can define an event. Remember the tags on the main calendar, such as job and estimate or pack and unpack. This is where we can select that tag and assign it to a job. If I had chosen estimate, then I would be assigning it to one of our estimates. And because we've tied this event to a job, the system knows the address and can insert that. And we can insert a current address or a new address if when appropriate. Here's where I designate who the contact is going to be. And that is relevant because when the system sends out an email or text message, then the main contact is going to be listed at the bottom. So it'll say, if you have questions, here's who you talk to, here's the phone number, here's the email. For Sharon, the address is populated into the event using this button right here. It does not, we don't currently have information for the profile or for the email address and phone number. But you can quickly, when we get back to the main view, I'll show you that you can jump quickly over to the job or the client profile to get that kind of information. All right, so we have, here's where we mark it as tentative, if that applies. We have 3 different ways of managing your attendees: the direct, invite, and availability. So direct is useful when you know already who's going to work on the event, and you just need to tell them. Or you don't need to tell them because you already spoke about it, but you just need to formalize it and put it into the system, is what I meant to say. SMMware can send out emails and text messages. Sometimes you're making a change and you don't want the messages to go out, and you say, all right, I'm going to skip the notifications this time around. And let's see, we'll talk about the invite just a little bit. The invite process has multiple steps and can be used in multiple ways. First come, first serve, or multiple rounds of invitations. Another way is to invite more people than you need, figure out who's interested, and then finally make assignments out of let's say there's 5 people interested and you only need 3, then you make that final assignment and the system informs them that, okay, they're part of this team or not. And I'll talk about availability. The associates can enter when they are, in this case, we have the system set for unavailability. There's another option for availability. I would say that unavailability is the more popular approach. And you can create new entries just by dragging in or clicking and dragging a new entry. Back on the calendar, when you're using availability, let's see if we'll find. Sorry, this one shows a little bit more detail. Might be more. There's one. All right. So this is a little bit more interesting because the other days everybody's available all the time, but that's not always the case. So these people are unavailable. So they marked that they are unavailable on the calendars. That's why they're not shown as available for that time chunk. This person is. It's not that they marked their calendar as unavailable, but rather they're assigned to an event, and you've got some details here about that event. So what you can do is look down this list and say, all right, we know we want to have the event in the morning, and we know we need 3 people. We got some people down there, but we'll go with this one. And then you can assign a shift. And the nice thing about this approach, this is our most sophisticated approach to attendee management, is that it allows for people not arriving and leaving at the same time. So this person is arriving at 9, this one's arriving at 10, these are leaving at 3, this person at 4:30. I'll go ahead and skip notifications. So now you can see that the purple sections represent them being assigned. So I see a question from Lisa. So the setting of unavailability or availability is a system setting. So you're going to pick an approach that everyone uses. They're either going to all enter their availability or they all enter their availability. So it's not something that's picked at one at a time at the user level. All right, so we're looking at an assigned event using availability, and now something changes. And so you need to update the event. Let's say that this person is busy for some reason. They can't attend this event anymore, but they can't attend another event either. So we're going to release them, and that will tell the system not to make them available. On the other hand, let's say that you thought you're going to need 4 people, things change. Now you only need 3, so you're going to pull somebody from the event. So I'm going to remove Judy, but in this case, even though she's not going to work on this event anymore, she could work on another one. So I don't want to just release her. I'm going to click it again, and she'll be mixed back. That time will get mixed back into the pool of availability. All right, so that's an introduction to our calendaring. So I think that based on our time, I'll skip what it looks like on a phone unless somebody specifically would like to see that. And I'll just talk about our integrations a little bit. Before I forget entirely, I wanted to talk about a new feature in SMMware that's going to be launched tomorrow. This is called the Profitability Report. And the idea here is that it pulls information from across the system and tells you how a given job went. So what we're doing here is we have a filter section, then we have a report. And we have, in the filter section, we have two main ways of going about this. We can designate a time span and get a report of a bunch of different jobs. Or we can look at one particular job by selecting a job here in this dropdown, or one or more jobs. And in SMMware, you can account for overhead. So SMMware doesn't directly track overhead, but if you talk to your accountant and ask what that figure should be, then you can put in, however much per hour applies here as an overhead rate, and then that will get applied to the job generally. And for the employee rate, this figure is used for the estimation phase. When you're estimating it, you might estimate how many hours it's going to be, but you're not going to designate specific employees. So SMMware cannot calculate precisely what your costs are going to be in terms of employee pay. So you can enter a figure here per your judgment, whether you use an average of your employee pay, or maybe if you think a given job needs a larger number of your higher paid employees, you can go with a little bit higher figure. That part is up to your judgment, but that gets used down below. And the system will tell you your gross margin, which is your raw revenue minus your total costs, and then the percentage. The operating expenses has to do with that overhead rate that we talked about. So if this has 42 hours and it's $10 an hour, that would be $420, and that is intended to account for the rent on an office space or other expenses that are not attributable to one specific job. So you're trying to spread those costs out across all your jobs, and you'll calculate that based on your totals for the office rental and utilities, by how many jobs or how many hours of labor you think will go into or how many hours you might think will be applicable for a given year, which is an estimate. And that'll give you an overhead rate. Now we've got a lot of links in the profitability report that takes you to the details. So I clicked on the payroll, and it showed me exactly what the payroll is for that job. For Catherine, see, the current report does not specifically provide doesn't provide specifically a summary of estimate versus actual, like across the whole. We have a system report, but I think I can add something like you're talking about, so that you can kind of gauge your sales accuracy. That's another good idea. This has been a pretty good session in terms of people offering ideas. All right. So again, that is the profitability report. And from here, I will talk about Mailchimp integration. So under your contacts, for instance, SMMware can integrate with Mailchimp. And when it does so, it will use these various categories as tags. And when you go to Mailchimp and you want to send out an email, you can use these tags to limit the recipients. So that way you've got your overall list of all your contacts and all your, Karen, thanks for coming, and glad to have you here, and have a great rest of the day. Certainly, I know I'm running a little bit long today, so if people need to duck out, I certainly understand. We have a few more items to cover for those of you who have the time. So this is the tags that are in Mailchimp. They're coming from the contacts categories in SMMware. This listing at Mailchimp can actually be a combination of your category or your contacts and also your clients. If it is a client, then they can be tagged as, let's see if we can find one here. Anyway, they'll be tagged as a current client, a past client. I'm just scrolling around looking for an example. See if I had one. Well, I have a lot of contacts in the system, so I'm not finding one yet. But they are in here, and they're tagged as past or current clients. So that gives you a fairly powerful tool for targeting people. The people who refer business to you, that's also a tag, even though it's not technically a category. And that is our Mailchimp integration. From here, I'll talk a little bit about the QuickBooks integration. First of all, QuickBooks Online. So the experience of copying items over to QuickBooks Online is one of selecting items here in SMMware and then saying you want to copy them over. The green circles means that items have already been copied over. The buttons indicate that they can still be copied over. And I'm going to pick just the one item as a demonstration. So that's what the experience looks like. You get some feedback that it was successfully created, no errors. And even though I copied over just the one item, a more typical usage would be to use the date range. Maybe you're going to do payroll, so you want to copy hours over. And you give it a date range, and then you would get a listing. And it would typically not be the case that most of these were already copied over. Usually they would all be ready to go, copied over now. Then you use the copy or the QBO add all button to get them all over at once. So you don't have to go onesie twosies to get them copied over. You can copy over hours in this case. You can copy over invoices. So you see that there's a QBO add button here under the invoices. You can copy over clients and organizations directly, but I would comment that when you copy over the so-called high-level things like an invoice or hours, the low-level items get copied over as well if needs be. So if I'm copying over hours and they were worked for a given client and the client is new, when I make the copy of the hours, the client will go over as well. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about QuickBooks Desktop. I've actually switched over to a different site. The two integrations are not simultaneous. You won't have QuickBooks integration or QuickBooks Online integration at the same time that you have QuickBooks Desktop integration. So now I'm on a different website. And the architecture is a little bit different for QuickBooks Desktop. It's a two-step process, and this is a structure provided by QuickBooks, and it's a security issue. So since QuickBooks is installed on your desktop machine, then rather than having the internet able to talk to your machine directly, which of course would include hackers, instead what we have here is your desktop machine is going to reach out across the internet and talk to the SMMware server and pull down the items at hand. So I'm going to go find an item here. I'm going to add it to the queue. Even though I am just adding one item, the typical usage again would be to queue a whole bunch of items at once. And the same way that QuickBooks Online can copy over the low-level items when you're copying over high ones, you'll copy over the new low-level ones. So can QuickBooks Desktop integration. Does the same thing. Here's where I'm looking at the queue, so you can get a sense of what's going to be copied over the next time you work with QuickBooks Desktop. All right, so now that I've got something in the queue, I'm going to come to QuickBooks, go to the Web Services section, and you'll see an entry for SMMware here. I'll go ahead and check mark it because up here it says that you update the selected item, so I have to have it selected. So now my desktop machine is going out over the internet, talking to the SMMware server. It's asking if it's got anything for it, and then it's pulling it down. And then in order to see that, you would go to look at the enter time section, go to the right date and the right employee. But I just want to give you a sense of what the experience is like and the idea that it's this two-step process. For Deanna, anytime you copy over, I wouldn't say that there's a best one. It's just that, let's say you want to copy over hours, and then it will capture the client or new client or new employee. And so if that's what's convenient at the moment, then just go ahead and it'll take care of the low-level items. On the other hand, if you start with an invoice and then some of the hours have not been copied over, then before it tries to copy the invoice, it'll copy the hours. And before it copies the hours, if there's a new client, it'll copy the client. So I don't know if it's necessarily a question of what's best. It's just what's convenient for you at that moment so that you have the freedom to copy over the high-level item that you want to copy over, knowing that the low-level items will be taken care of. And so that pretty much wraps up our tour. we've walked you through the clients, the estimates, jobs, working with hours and expenses, creating invoices and files. Our second track had organizations and contacts. The third one, task notes, calls, and calendars. And we have our integrations with Mailchimp and Quickbooks. So from here, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them now or later on. If you want to email me, it's bjacobs@smware.com. This is the main SMMware site, and you can always get the phone number here, or you can go to the contact us page to contact me. And among those of you who are not subscribers at this time, you can, if you decide that you're ready to subscribe, you can go to the pricing and sign up page. And I will just mention that we don't charge a setup fee. There's no annual contract. We're going to offer the first 30 days free, and training is also free. And so thank you for attending today. And I know that we've got a combination of people who are new and people who are already subscribers. Just always happy to answer questions, and thank you for attending. So I'll go ahead and sign off. Everybody have a great day.